If you're thinking of building an electric guitar, you should probably build your own templates. It's not that difficult. It's not that expensive. We'll go through it step by step. So stay with me. Let's build some guitars. Hi, I'm Yoav, and this is the Electric Luthier. And today we'll go over everything you need to know in order to make your own guitar templates. You want templates to maintain accuracy, but you also want to be able to repeat the design, whether it's yours or a classic. I'll also talk about the materials and the process you need, and which part of the guitars you actually want to have templates for. We'll usually start with planning. You can draw your design on any large piece of paper, on the computer using any type of design software, or you might just buy it online. However you get your plans, you'll need to make decisions regarding the style of the guitar, the scale length, the hardware, and all the other little details that you're going to run into when you're actually building the guitar. After we made all these decisions, we want to print out the templates. Now, if you have access to a plotter, that's the best thing. Then you can print one piece of paper, full scale, and you're done. But even if you don't have access to a plotter, you can still use any old computer, even your house computer, to create a poster mode, which will actually give you pieces of your template, which you can paste together and have it in full scale. As an example, see this little thing? It's two pieces. This is an A3 printer, so it's not as small as you might get, but it's still good. And you have the full scale Tele right here. If you want to hear more about poster mode and how to print full scale in a regular printer, just let me know in the comments below and we might just make a video just for that. If you like what I'm doing here, please like us and subscribe. After you printed all your parts, they usually come in one big sheet, you might want to cut them out separately so you can create separate templates for each part. There's a good chance you're going to ruin a couple of these. You might want to print a couple more just to have extras. Acrylic, MDF, any type of plywood or laminated sheets, and particle boards. Do not use particle boards. There is no quality of particle boards that is good enough to make templates from. So just leave that one out. So what do we want to make the templates from? You've probably seen templates of big companies that have them with a nice acrylic. That's all nice and well. Acrylic is pretty expensive and hard to get by, and if you make any mistakes, that's too bad. Most people use just good old MDF. A piece like this. I use 8 or 10 millimeters. They're pretty easy to work with. They're light. That would be like 3/8 of an inch or 5/8 of an inch. You can use thicker ones. They're just a bit heavier. They last longer. There are two main considerations for which material to use for your templates. One is smoothness. You want material that's going to be as smooth as possible because that smoothness is going to transfer directly to your guitar. If your template is going to be rough, you're going to have to do more sanding on the guitar. The other consideration is durability. You want something that'll last you at least for a few times. A lot of people like to use plywood for templates. Plywood should be fine if you have very good quality plywood. So if your plywood is nice and even, it has no spaces, then you should be fine. But in most cases, medium to low quality plywood will have some spaces, and when you run on them with your router, you're gonna run into problems, and your template is not gonna come out, or your guitar is not gonna come out as smooth as you would want it to be. So I'm gonna be using this Tele as an example, or Tele style body shape. So now we want to start actually creating the template. So the first thing to do would take this paper and transfer it to the MDF or our material of choice. One simple option is just to paste it. Use any kind of spray adhesive. Paste it on. And we're ready for cutting. Second option, using a Sharpie, and you just may want to put a couple of pieces of masking tape just to hold it. That's good enough. And then we're just gonna trace it. I'm using a thick Sharpie. It'll just make things easier. This way, eventually, when I sand it, I want the whole line to be gone. So this is a pretty good indication of how much sanding I need to do. And we have our back, or just the basic shape, and we're ready for cutting. After tracing, you want to take it either to a bandsaw or even just a jig saw and cut roughly around it. Now you want to be as close as possible to the line on the one hand, so you'll have less sanding to do. On the other hand, you really don't want to cross over the line. How fast you're going to go is really up to your experience and your tools, and I'm speeding here at 5 times the normal speed, so I look really professional, but really take your time. Now when it comes to the cavities, in many cases you need to drill holes just to get started. And in some of the plans you actually have the radius, the exact diameter you need. So if you have the drill set, you can work very accurately, and it actually makes it easier to do the corners. I usually leave the neck cavity a bit larger, or actually a bit smaller, and actually do the fine-tuning of the neck cavity only after I have the neck. After you cut it, roughly, now you want to sand it to perfection. Your guitar is going to be as smooth as the template. So the better you sand it, the smoother it'll be. The one important thing to remember is you want the edge to always be 90 degrees. You don't want any skewed edges or rounded edges. So if you're hand sanding, make sure you use a block or something like that that'll keep it nice and straight. You can use a spindle sander, you can use a belt sander, or you can use a disc sander. Whichever one works for you, or you can of course sand manually. The important thing is to keep the edge straight. This is my improvised spindle sander. It's not an oscillating spindle sander, but it is spinning. Just a drill, and I put some sanding paper on a few discs that I've cut out. It's not ideal, but it works. And this might also be a good place to mention vacuums. If you have the option of vacuuming your dust while working, that is definitely the best option. If you're thinking of creating more than one guitar with the same shape, you may want to make a master. What do I mean by a master? Have one template, trace it or copy it as a template to the next one, and have one that's just going to sit there and you'll be making templates from that one and not guitars from that one. That one will probably last you years, and usually templates will last you a few guitars. If you take care of them, they can last you a pretty long time. If you're making a one-off template, let's say this beautiful Tele, and you're already routing the cavities and everything in your template, that's fine. But what if next time you want to have a humbucker? Or maybe you want to have a different bridge? Or maybe you want to have a different neck? So sometimes what you want to do is have one template for the shape of the body and different templates for the cavities. Let me know in the comments below if you want me to do a tutorial just for different pickups and cavities. So now we have a template. We cut it, we sanded it, it's all nice and smooth, we're ready to use it. The one important thing you need to always remember is mark your center line. Your center line affects everything. It affects the neck, it affects the pickups, it affects the bridge. So you always want to keep your center line. If you mark the center line before cutting, you're going to cut the markings out. So make sure you mark it on the inside as well as the outside. So the original plan with all the measurements, and I have my center line over here, and I'm just going to place this right here, right in the center, right there. Okay, so now we want to copy this and make a master out of this one. Before we put the double-sided tape, we want to cut it. Right? We want to rough it out first. The jigsaw is doing a really rough job here, but not to worry, it's going to be all smooth after I route it out, so I'm not really worried about that. So what router do you want to use? Do you want to use a hand router or a table router? Well, if you have a table router, you're probably going to need a hand router as well, because you're not going to be able to do everything. The two main concerns with routers is steadiness and safety. The benefit of the table is steadiness. Your hand router can wiggle and damage the edge. That cannot happen with a table. On the other hand, you cannot use the table router to do the internal cavities because you're just not going to see what you're doing. So you probably need either both, or at least one good hand router. The router is probably the fastest rotating tool you'll have in your shop. It can do a lot of damage very quickly. You need to be aware of it. So which router do you want to use? Do you want to use a hand router or a table router? You can start with anything as small as this little one. It has the right blade. It'll do the job maybe slowly, maybe more carefully, but it's very easy to handle. It's much safer than most routers. If you're using more of a classic style router, I've had this one for about 30 years, still works, does a great job. Not only that, I'm attaching it to the table upside down. Basically, you need to detach the original plate and get an alternative table insert plate. I made one from scrap plywood, but you can get these on Amazon from $18 up to $50 or $60 for the aluminum ones. I'll put a link to it in the description below. The problem with hand routers is just stability. If you have a stable hand, you're all good. If you tend to do this kind of motion while routing, then you're going to have a problem. I like to use a clamp on top of the double-sided tape. It gives me better stability, and I don't really trust the double-sided tape 100%. Now when routing, make sure you're routing against the rotation of the blade. How do you know if you're in the right direction? Very simple, resistance. If you feel like you have to push against the router and not the router pulling you, then you're in the right direction. I'm doing 2 passes of routing here. You always get a better result when you do it more than 1 pass. It's easier for the router. When you're done, just remove the double-sided tape, and there you have it. Beautiful, smooth master template. So after we've created both a template and a master, you want to take care of them. You want these to last you. The best way to do that is protect the edges. So what you're going to do is probably take just your favorite water-based glue with equal amounts of water. So it's about a 50-50 there. Give it a nice mix, and then just go over. It'll soak it up and it'll become rock hard. And last but not least, protect yourself. MDF has the thinnest and nastiest dust you can create in your workshop. You do not want to breathe that stuff. Make sure you either have some kind of breathing protection, either something simple as this, or if you want to upgrade to something a bit more substantial. But make sure you put something over your face so you don't breathe that stuff. On top of that, you also want to protect your ears. Routers are very, very noisy. And what's the point making guitars if you're gonna lose your hearing? And let's not forget our eyes. You never know when that little chip is gonna fly off the router right into your eye and ruin your day, if not worse. So protect yourself. I'm gonna be putting links to all the tools and bits I'm using here, and also to the full article of how to create templates on our website. So make sure to subscribe and come visit us at theelectricluthier.com. Just look it up.